I pull into the hospital parking lot, my hand still trembling on the steering wheel. The fluorescent lights from the emergency room entrance cast everything in a sickly yellow glow, and I can see my reflection in the windshield, a 52-year-old man who looks like he's aged 10 years in the past 3 hours. My daughter Emma sits in the passenger seat, her face streaked with tears, staring straight ahead like she's watching her life fall apart in real time, which I guess she is. "Dad, I'm sorry," she whispers for the 20th time since we left Dr. Morrison's office. "I didn't think he'd actually—" "Don't," I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. "Just don't, Emma." The irony isn't lost on me. 3 hours ago, I was sitting in a routine physical, joking with my doctor about my blood pressure medication and complaining about my lower back. Now I'm here because my 24-year-old daughter told a medical professional that I was suicidal and planning to hurt myself. The fact that it was a complete fabrication doesn't seem to matter to anyone except the 3 witnesses who were actually in the room when she said it. Dr. Morrison had looked at me with that careful, clinical expression doctors get when they're about to destroy your life for your own good. "Michael, I'm going to need you to go to the hospital for evaluation. Your daughter is very concerned about some statements you've made." I'd stared at him, then at Emma, then back at him. "What statements?" "She says you've been talking about not wanting to be here anymore, that you've been researching methods." The words hit me like a physical blow. I turned to Emma, who was crying, really crying, not the manipulative tears I'd seen from her before, but the kind of desperate sobbing that comes from someone who's painted themselves into a corner they can't escape. "Emma, what the hell are you talking about?" But she couldn't look at me. She just kept crying. And Dr. Morrison kept looking at me with that expression, and I realized with growing horror that this was actually happening. My own daughter was having me committed to a psychiatric hold based on a lie. The thing is, there were witnesses. My neighbor Pete had stopped by just as we were leaving for the appointment. He'd wanted to borrow my leaf blower. Emma's boyfriend Jake had been there too, sprawled on my couch playing video games like he lived here. And my ex-wife Sarah had called right in the middle of everything, one of her usual check-ins that somehow always managed to catch me at the worst possible moments. All 3 of them heard Emma's phone call to Dr. Morrison's office. All 3 of them heard her voice, shaky and dramatic, telling the nurse that she was really worried about her father and that he'd been saying some concerning things. They heard her pause, heard her take a deep breath, and then heard her say the words that would change everything. "I think he might hurt himself." Pete had looked confused. Jake had glanced up from his game controller. Sarah, still on speakerphone, had actually said, "Emma, what are you talking about? Your father seems fine." But Emma was already in too deep. Once she'd made the call, once she'd said those words, there was no taking them back. The medical system doesn't take chances with suicide threats, real or imagined. Dr. Morrison was legally obligated to act on the information provided by a family member, regardless of whether it was true. Now I'm sitting in a hospital parking lot, about to be evaluated by a psychiatrist who will decide whether I'm a danger to myself. The evaluation that will go on my permanent medical record. The evaluation that could affect my job, my insurance, my custody arrangement with my younger son Tyler. All because my daughter decided to weaponize the mental health system against me. "Why?" I ask her, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this to me?" Emma wipes her nose with the back of her hand. She's wearing one of those oversized hoodies that make her look younger than she is, and for a moment I can see the little girl who used to climb into my lap when she had nightmares. But that little girl wouldn't have done this to me. "You've been different," she says finally. "Ever since Mom and you split up for good, ever since Tyler chose to live with her full-time, you've been distant." "Distant isn't suicidal, Emma." "I know that," her voice cracks. "I know that now. But when I called Dr. Morrison's office, I was just trying to get them to talk to you about maybe seeing someone, a therapist or something. I thought if I said I was worried, they'd just, I don't know, recommend counseling." I lean back in the driver's seat and close my eyes. The weight of what she's done is starting to settle in. You lied to a medical professional about my mental state to try to force me into therapy. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. But it did happen like this. And now I have to go in there and convince a stranger that I'm not crazy, that my own daughter made the whole thing up. I open my eyes and look at her. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" She starts crying again, harder this time. "I was scared, Dad. You've been so sad since everything fell apart with Mom. You barely talk to Tyler when he comes over. You work all the time, you don't date, you don't do anything except sit in that house and exist. Existing isn't a crime, Emma. But it's not living either." The words hit me harder than I want to admit, because she's not entirely wrong. The past 2 years, since Sarah and I finally made our separation permanent, since Tyler decided he wanted to stay with his mother full-time, since Emma moved out and started her own life, it's been a steady slide into a kind of gray numbness that I've been telling myself is just middle age. I work my job at the engineering firm. I come home to an empty house. I watch television or read until I'm tired enough to sleep. On weekends, I do yard work or fix things that don't really need fixing. Tyler comes over every other weekend, but he's 15 now and would rather be with his friends than his old man. Emma visits maybe once a month, usually when she needs money or advice or both. It's not a bad life, exactly. It's just not much of a life at all. But that doesn't give her the right to do this to me. "We need to go in," I say, checking the time on my phone. "Dr. Morrison said they're expecting us." Emma grabs my arm as I reach for the door handle. "Dad, wait. I can fix this. I can call Dr. Morrison and tell him I made a mistake, that I was wrong." I look at her hand on my arm, then at her face. She's trying so hard to fix something that can't unfixed. It doesn't work that way, sweetheart. Once you've made an allegation like this, it has to be investigated. They have to be absolutely sure I'm not a danger to myself or anyone else. But you're not. I know that. You know that. Pete and Jake and your mother know that. But Dr. Morrison doesn't know that, and neither does whoever I'm about to meet in there. The automatic doors of the emergency room slide open as we approach, and I'm hit by that distinctive hospital smell, disinfectant and fear and something else I can't quite identify. The waiting room is half full, the usual mix of actual emergencies and people who couldn't get in to see their regular doctors. A woman with a crying baby paces near the windows. An elderly man sits clutching his chest, his wife holding his free hand. A teenager with what looks like a broken arm scrolls through his phone with his good hand, looking bored. I approach the reception desk, and the woman behind it looks up with the kind of practiced smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Michael Harrison," I say. "I believe Dr. Morrison called ahead." She types something into her computer, and her expression changes slightly. More careful, more clinical. "Yes, Mr. Harrison. Well, need you to fill out these forms, and then someone will be with you shortly." She hands me a clipboard with what feels like 20 pages of paperwork, insurance information, medical history, emergency contacts, and then, toward the bottom, the questions I've been dreading. Have you had thoughts of hurting yourself or others? Have you made plans to hurt yourself or others? Do you have access to weapons or means of self-harm? I check no to all of them, but I wonder if it even matters. The fact that I'm here at all suggests that someone thinks otherwise. Emma sits beside me as I work through the forms, and I can feel the weight of her guilt radiating off her like heat. She keeps starting to say something, then stopping herself. Finally, when I'm halfway through the medical history section, she speaks up. "I called Mom while you were parking. She's driving up from Richmond." I look up from the forms. You called Sarah? I thought, I thought maybe if she talked to the doctors, if she told them you're fine, it might help. Emma, your mother and I are divorced. Her opinion of my mental state might not carry a lot of weight here. But she's known you for 25 years. She knows you better than anyone. I go back to the forms, but my mind is stuck on the idea of Sarah driving 3 hours to come rescue me from our daughter's well-intentioned disaster. The last time I saw her was 6 months ago, at Tyler's baseball game. We'd been polite, cordial even, but there was an undercurrent of sadness to it all. The weight of a marriage that had slowly collapsed under the accumulated weight of small disappointments and diverging dreams. "Mr. Harrison?" I look up to see a young woman in scrubs standing nearby. She has kind eyes and the sort of calm competence that suggests she's dealt with situations like this before. "I'm Jennifer, one of the psychiatric nurses. Would you like to come back with me?" I hand the completed forms to the receptionist and follow Jennifer through a set of double doors. Emma starts to come with us, but Jennifer stops her. "I'll need to speak with your father privately first. You can wait in the family area. It's just down the hall." Emma looks panicked. "But I need to explain." "You'll have a chance to speak with the doctor later," Jennifer says gently. "Right now, I need to do an initial assessment with your father." The room Jennifer leads me to is small and sterile, with 2 chairs and a small table. There's no window, and the fluorescent light overhead gives everything a harsh, institutional quality. She closes the door and sits across from me, a tablet in her hands. "So, Mr. Harrison, can you tell me what brought you in today?" I take a deep breath. My daughter told my doctor that I was suicidal. It's not true. Jennifer nods, making notes on her tablet. "Can you elaborate on that?" "She called my doctor's office this morning and told them I'd been making statements about wanting to hurt myself. She said I'd been researching methods. None of it is true." "And why do you think she would say that?" This is the question I've been dreading, because the honest answer makes me sound like exactly the kind of person who might be struggling with depression. I think she's worried about me. My ex-wife and I finalized our divorce 2 years ago. My son chose to live with his mother. Emma moved out and started her own life. I've been adjusting to living alone. How has that adjustment been for you? I consider lying, giving her the answer I think she wants to hear. But something about Jennifer's manner makes me think honesty might be more effective. It's been hard. I won't lie about that. I go to work, I come home, I watch TV, I go to bed. On weekends, I do yard work or fix things around the house. It's not exciting, but it's not dangerous either. Have you had any thoughts of hurting yourself? No. Any thoughts that life isn't worth living? I pause, because this one is trickier. I think everyone has moments where they wonder what the point is, but wondering what the point is isn't the same as wanting to die. Jennifer makes more notes. "Can you tell me about your relationship with your daughter? Has there been any conflict between you recently?" "Not conflict, exactly, but she's been pushing me to start dating, to get back out there. She thinks I'm wasting my life by not pursuing a relationship." I lean back in the chair. The truth is, I'm 52 years old. I was married for 23 years. The idea of starting over with someone new feels exhausting, not exciting. "So there's been pressure from her for you to change your lifestyle?" Pressure might be too strong a word, but yes, she's made it clear that she thinks I should be doing more with my life. Jennifer looks up from her tablet. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Right now, today, do you have any intention of hurting yourself?" "No." "Do you have a plan to hurt yourself?" "No." "Do you have access to means that could be used for self-harm?" I think about this one. I own a gun. It's locked in a safe. I have prescription medications. I have a garage with a car. I suppose if someone was determined to hurt themselves, they could find a way. But I'm not that someone. She nods and makes more notes. "I'm going to have Dr. Chen come in to speak with you. He's the psychiatrist on duty today. After that, we'll probably want to speak with your daughter as well. She leaves me alone in the small room, and I find myself staring at the institutional green walls and thinking about how I got here. 3 hours ago, I was a functioning adult with a routine medical appointment. Now, I'm being evaluated for suicide risk because my daughter decided to take my emotional well-being into her own hands. The door opens, and a man in his 40s enters. He's wearing a white coat over khakis and a button-down shirt, and he has the kind of beard that suggests he's trying to look more approachable than authoritative. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Dr. Chen. I understand you're here because of some concerns your daughter raised with your primary care physician." "That's right." He sits down and pulls out his own tablet. "I've reviewed the notes from your intake with Jennifer. Can you walk me through what happened this morning?" I tell him the whole story, from Emma's phone call to Dr. Morrison's office, to the witnesses who heard her make the allegations, to the conversation in my car outside. Dr. Chen listens without interrupting, occasionally making notes. "So your position is that your daughter fabricated these concerns. My position is that my daughter misrepresented my emotional state to try to force me into getting help she thinks I need." "And do you think you need help?" The question catches me off guard. I think I'm grieving the end of my marriage and adjusting to an empty nest. I think those are normal responses to major life changes. "But you don't think professional support would be beneficial?" I consider this. Maybe, but that should be my choice to make, not something forced on me through a lie to a medical professional. Dr. Chen nods. "Tell me about your support system. Who do you talk to when you're struggling?" "I have a friend, Pete, who lives next door. We talk sometimes. My brother lives in California, but we stay in touch. I have colleagues at work." "What about romantic relationships? Are you dating anyone?" "No." "Any interest in dating?" I sigh. "Dr. Chen, I'm 52 years old. I spent my 20s and 30s building a career and raising kids. I spent my 40s watching my marriage slowly fall apart. The idea of putting myself back out there, of starting over with someone new, of navigating the modern dating world." I trail off. "It just feels like more effort than I have to give right now." "And how does that make you feel?" "Tired, sometimes sad, but not suicidal." There's a knock on the door, and Jennifer pokes her head in. "Dr. Chen, the patient's ex-wife is here. She'd like to speak with you." Dr. Chen looks at me. "Would you be comfortable with me speaking to her?" "I suppose that depends on what she's going to tell you." "I'll speak with her briefly. And then I'd like to bring your daughter in as well. We should have a clearer picture after that." He leaves, and I'm alone again with my thoughts. The idea of Sarah being here, driving 3 hours to essentially vouch for my sanity, fills me with a complicated mix of gratitude and embarrassment. We may not have been able to make our marriage work, but she's still someone who knows me better than almost anyone else. When Dr. Chen returns, his expression is more relaxed. He sits down and looks at his notes. "Your ex-wife confirms that you've been struggling with the adjustment to living alone, but she doesn't believe you're a danger to yourself. She says, and I quote, 'Michael has always been dramatic about his feelings, but he's never been self-destructive.'" I can't help but smile at that. It sounds exactly like something Sarah would say. "She also mentioned that your daughter has been worried about you for several months and has been pressuring both of you to intervene somehow." That sounds right. "I'm going to bring your daughter in now. I want to hear her side of this directly." Emma enters the room looking like she's been crying for the past hour, which she probably has. She sits in the chair next to me but doesn't look at me directly. "Emma," Dr. Chen says, "can you tell me about the phone call you made to Dr. Morrison's office this morning?" Emma's voice is barely above a whisper. "I told them I was worried about my dad, that he'd been saying things that concerned me." "What kinds of things?" She finally looks at me, and I can see the desperation in her eyes. "He didn't actually say anything specific, but he's been so empty. Like he's just going through the motions of living. And I was scared that if something didn't change, She trails off. "So you didn't hear him make statements about wanting to hurt himself?" "No." And he hasn't been researching methods of self-harm? Not that I know of. Dr. Chen makes notes. Emma, do you understand the seriousness of what you told Dr. Morrison's office? She nods, tears streaming down her face. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought they'd just recommend therapy or something. I was trying to help. Help with what, specifically? Emma looks at me again. Dad, you haven't been living. You've been existing. You go to work, you come home, you sit in that house by yourself. You don't date, you barely see friends, you don't have hobbies. It's like you're just waiting for time to pass. Her words sting because they're not entirely wrong. But being stuck in a rut isn't the same as being suicidal. Emma, I say, being lonely isn't the same as wanting to die. But what if it becomes that? What if you just keep getting more and more isolated until... She can't finish the sentence. Dr. Chen looks between us. Emma, I want you to understand something. Making false reports about someone's mental state can have serious consequences. Your father could lose his job, his security clearance, his custody rights. These allegations become part of his permanent medical record. Emma's face crumples. I didn't know. I really didn't know it would be this serious. That's why it's important to be truthful with medical professionals, Dr. Chen says gently. Mental health crises are real and serious, and when false alarms are raised, it takes resources away from people who genuinely need help. He turns to me. Mr. Harrison, based on my assessment, I don't believe you pose a risk to yourself or others. However, I am concerned about what your daughter described. The isolation, the lack of engagement with life beyond work. Have you considered counseling? I've thought about it, I admit, but I keep telling myself I'll get through this rough patch on my own. Sometimes we need help getting through the rough patches. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us, it just means we're human. Emma speaks up suddenly. Dad, would you consider going to therapy? Not because I lied to Dr. Morrison, but because maybe it would help? I look at her tear-stained face, at the desperation and guilt written across her features. She made a terrible decision, but it came from a place of love and fear. And maybe, underneath all the anger and humiliation, there's a grain of truth to what she's saying. I'll think about it, I say finally. Dr. Chen nods. I'm going to discharge you with a recommendation for outpatient counseling. I'll also make a note in your file that the initial concerns were based on misunderstood information from a family member, not on direct threats or evidence of self-harm. Relief washes over me. So this won't affect my job or my custody arrangement? The fact that you were evaluated will be in your medical record, but the circumstances and the outcome should mitigate any potential issues. I'd recommend being proactive about addressing this with your employer if you think it might become an issue. An hour later, Emma and I are walking back to my car. Sarah is waiting by her Honda, looking tired from the drive but relieved. She walks over as we approach. How did it go? She asks. I've been released with a recommendation for therapy, I tell her. No psychiatric hold, no immediate danger determination. Sarah nods. Good, that's good. She looks at Emma. We need to talk about this, though. What you did today was serious. Emma starts crying again. I know I messed up. I was just so scared that Dad was going to keep getting worse and worse. She can't finish. Sarah puts her arm around Emma's shoulders. Honey, I understand you were worried. But there are better ways to help someone than lying to their doctor. I know that now. Sarah looks at me over Emma's head. Michael, are you okay? Really okay? I consider the question seriously. I'm lonely. I'm probably depressed. I'm definitely stuck in a rut, but I'm not suicidal and I'm not dangerous. That's what I told Dr. Chen. Thank you for driving up here, for vouching for me. You didn't have to do that. Sarah shrugs. We may not be married anymore, but you're still the father of my children. And despite everything that went wrong between us, I know who you are. You're not someone who would hurt himself. Emma pulls away from her mother and looks at me. Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make this right. You can't make it right, I tell her, but you can learn from it, and you can respect my choices, even if you don't agree with them. But you'll consider therapy? I sigh. Yes, Emma, I'll consider therapy. But because I think it might help, not because you scared me into it. We stand there for a moment, the three of us, in the hospital parking lot under the fluorescent lights. A family that's been broken apart and put back together in a different configuration, still trying to figure out how to care for each other without destroying each other in the process. I should get back on the road, Sarah says finally. It's a long drive home. She hugs Emma, then hesitates before giving me a brief, awkward hug as well. Take care of yourself, Michael. Really, I will. After Sarah drives away, Emma and I get in my car. We drive in silence for a while, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Dad? Emma says as we pull into my driveway. Yeah? I really was scared. About you, I mean. Watching you these past 2 years, it's been like watching you disappear a little bit at a time. I turn off the engine and sit there for a moment. Emma, I know you think I've been wasting my life, and maybe you're right. But grief isn't a straight line. Healing isn't on a schedule. Sometimes you have to sit with the sadness for a while before you can figure out what comes next. But what if what comes next is nothing? What if you just stay stuck forever? It's a fair question, and one I've been avoiding asking myself. Then maybe that's when I'll need help figuring out how to get unstuck. She nods. I love you, Dad. I know I really screwed up today, but I love you. I love you too, sweetheart, even when you make spectacularly bad decisions. That night, after Emma has gone home to her apartment and I'm alone in my house again, I find myself thinking about the question Dr. Chen asked me. Do you think you need help? The honest answer is probably yes, not because I'm suicidal or dangerous, but because I've been treading water for 2 years, and treading water isn't the same as swimming toward shore. I think about Emma's words in the hospital parking lot about disappearing a little bit at a time. Maybe she's not wrong. Maybe I have been disappearing, just not in the dramatic way she imagined. I pull out my phone and do something I haven't done in 2 years. I search for therapists in my area. Not because my daughter lied to my doctor and forced my hand, but because maybe it's time to figure out what comes after the sadness. The irony isn't lost on me. Emma's misguided attempt to force me into getting help may have been the push I needed to actually consider getting help. Not because she scared me into it, but because spending 3 hours in a psychiatric evaluation gave me a clearer picture of where I actually stand. I'm not suicidal, I'm not dangerous, but I'm not really living either. And maybe, at 52, it's time to figure out what living might look like in this new phase of my life. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in Dr. Patricia Summers' office, a comfortable space with soft lighting and actual windows that overlook a small garden. She's a woman in her 50s with graying hair and the kind of calm presence that makes it easy to talk. So, what brings you here today, Michael? My daughter had me committed for a psychiatric evaluation because she thought I was suicidal. I wasn't, but the experience made me realize that maybe I do need some help figuring out how to move forward with my life. Dr. Summers nods. That sounds like a complicated situation. It was, but maybe a necessary one. I tell her about the past 2 years, about the divorce and the empty nest and the gray numbness that settled over my daily routine. I tell her about Emma's fears and Sarah's long drive and the witnesses who heard my daughter's lie. It sounds like your daughter was trying to help in a misguided way, Dr. Summers says. She was, and the thing is, she wasn't entirely wrong. I have been disappearing, just not in the way she thought. What does disappearing mean to you? I think about it. Going through the motions without really being present, working and sleeping and existing without really engaging with life. And what would engaging with life look like? It's a question I've been avoiding for 2 years. I don't know yet. That's why I'm here. Dr. Summers smiles. That's a good place to start. Over the following weeks, we work through the layers of loss I've been carrying. Not just the end of my marriage, but the end of the family structure that defined my adult life. the loss of my daily role as a husband and a full-time father, the loss of the future I'd imagined for myself. Grief isn't just for death, Dr. Summers tells me during one session. We grieve the loss of relationships, the loss of dreams, the loss of the selves we used to be. So it's normal to feel like I'm mourning my old life? Absolutely. The question is whether you want to stay in mourning forever or whether you're ready to start building something new. It's not a quick process. Therapy isn't magic, and there's no dramatic moment where everything suddenly becomes clear. But slowly, session by session, I start to see possibilities I hadn't considered before. I start small. I join a hiking group that meets on Saturday mornings. I take a cooking class, something I'd never had time for when I was married and working and parenting full-time. I reach out to old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. The changes aren't revolutionary, but they're real. I start looking forward to my weekends instead of just enduring them. I have conversations with people about things other than work. I remember what it feels like to be curious about something new. Emma notices the changes when she comes over for dinner one evening in late October. I've made lasagna from scratch, something I learned in my cooking class, and I've invited Pete and his wife over to join us. "Dad, you seem different," she says as we're cleaning up afterward. Different how? Happier, more present. I think about that word, present. It's what Dr. Summers and I have been working on. Not dwelling in the past or worrying about the future, but actually showing up for the life I'm living right now. "I'm working on it," I tell her. "I'm proud of you," she says. "And I'm sorry again about the whole hospital thing. Emma, you made a mistake, a big one. But maybe it was a mistake I needed you to make." She hugs me, and for the first time in months, it doesn't feel desperate or guilty. It just feels like a daughter hugging her father. Later that evening, after everyone has gone home, I sit on my back porch with a cup of coffee and think about the path that led me here. 6 months ago, I was a man going through the motions, convincing myself that a small, contained life was enough. Now, I'm a man actively working to build something bigger. It's not that I've completely transformed. I still miss my old life sometimes. I still have days when the loneliness feels overwhelming. But I've learned the difference between being alone and being lonely, between solitude and isolation. My phone buzzes with a text from Tyler, my 15-year-old son. "Dad, can we go hiking this weekend? Jake said you joined some hiking group, and he wants to try it too." I smile and text back, "Absolutely, I'll pick you up Saturday morning." It's a small thing, but it represents something bigger. For the first time in 2 years, my son is interested in something I'm doing with my life. Not because I'm his father and he has to spend time with me, but because I'm doing something that sounds interesting to him. As I get ready for bed, I think about the question Dr. Chen asked me in that sterile hospital room. "Do you think you need help?" The answer is still yes, but for different reasons now. Not because I'm broken or dangerous, but because growth is an ongoing process. Because learning to live well is a skill that requires practice and support. Emma was wrong to lie to my doctor. She was wrong to weaponize the mental health system to try to force me into getting help. But she was right about one thing. I had been disappearing, a little bit at a time. The difference is that now I'm reappearing, also a little bit at a time. And that feels like progress worth making. A year later, I'm standing in the kitchen of my house, which no longer feels empty, but feels like home. Emma is here with her boyfriend Jake, who has become less of a couch-dwelling video game player and more of an actual person in the time I've gotten to know him. Tyler is here too, having spent the weekend with me for the first time in over a year. We're making dinner together, something that never would have happened in my old life, when I considered cooking a chore to be gotten through as quickly as possible. Now it's become something I enjoy, especially when I have company. "Dad, remember when I had you committed?" Emma says suddenly, then immediately looks horrified that she brought it up. Tyler looks up from the salad he's making. "Wait, what?" "Your sister thought I was suicidal and told my doctor I was dangerous," I explain. "It was a whole thing." "Were you?" Tyler asks with the blunt curiosity of a teenager. Suicidal? No. But I was pretty stuck, I admit. Sometimes when people are worried about you, they don't always handle it in the best way. Emma is still looking mortified. Dad, I can't believe I just brought that up like it was a funny story. It kind of is a funny story now, I tell her. At the time, it was horrible, but looking back, it's pretty absurd. What's absurd about it? Tyler asks. Your sister was so worried about me being depressed that she tried to have me institutionalized. It's like trying to cure someone's headache by hitting them with a hammer. Tyler laughs. That's pretty messed up, Emma. I know, Emma says. I know it was messed up, but look how things turned out. Dad's in therapy, he's happier, he's actually living his life instead of just existing. So you're saying the ends justify the means? I ask. Emma considers this. No, I'm saying that sometimes good things can come from really bad decisions. But I would never do something like that again. Good, I say. Because next time you're worried about me, just talk to me directly. Deal. As we sit down to eat, I think about how different this feels from dinners 2 years ago. Then, conversations with my kids felt stilted and careful, like we were all walking on eggshells around the reality of our fractured family. Now, we can laugh about past mistakes, acknowledge present difficulties, and make plans for the future. It's not that everything is perfect. I'm still single, still learning how to navigate middle age as a divorced man. Tyler still lives primarily with his mother, and sometimes I miss more of his life than I'd like. Emma still worries about me, though she's learned to express that worry in more productive ways. But I'm not disappearing anymore. I'm present for my own life in a way I wasn't before. And that makes all the difference. After dinner, as we're watching a movie together, Emma leans over and whispers, Dad, I really am sorry about the hospital thing. I know you are, I whisper back. And you know what? I'm glad it happened. Really? Really, because it forced me to take a hard look at how I was living, and I didn't like what I saw. What did you see? I think about how to explain it. I saw a man who was so afraid of being hurt again that he'd stopped trying to really live. I saw someone who had convinced himself that a small, safe life was better than risking disappointment or failure. Emma nods. And now? Now I see someone who's willing to take some risks, who's open to new experiences, who's not perfect, but who's actively working on getting better. The movie continues, but I find myself thinking about the journey that brought me here. From that terrible day in the hospital parking lot to this comfortable evening with my children, it's been a path I never could have predicted. My phone buzzes with a text, and I glance at it quickly. It's from Dr. Summers, confirming our appointment for next week. We've scaled back to monthly sessions now, but I still find the check-ins valuable. Growth isn't a destination. It's an ongoing process. Who's texting? Tyler asks. My therapist. Cool, he says, like it's the most normal thing in the world, which, I suppose, it should be. That night, after Emma and Jake have gone home and Tyler has settled into the guest room that I finally converted from my old home office, I sit on the back porch again. It's become my favorite thinking spot, a place where I can process the day and prepare for tomorrow. I think about the man I was 2 years ago, sitting in this same spot but feeling completely different about my life. That man was stuck, but he didn't know how to get unstuck. He was lonely, but he was afraid to reach out. He was grieving, but he was ashamed of his grief. This man, the one I am now, still has lonely moments and sad days, but he has tools for dealing with them. He has people to talk to. He has activities that bring him joy and purpose. More importantly, he has hope. Not naive optimism, but genuine hope based on evidence that change is possible, that growth can happen at any age, that it's never too late to start living more fully. My neighbor Pete appears at the fence between our yards, holding a beer. Mind if I join you? Come on over. He settles into the chair next to mine, and we sit in comfortable silence for a while. Pete was one of the witnesses to Emma's phone call that day, and he's been a steady presence throughout my journey back to engagement with life.
"You know," he says eventually, "I've been thinking about that day when Emma called your doctor." "Yeah?" "At the time, I thought she was crazy. I mean, you were obviously sad about the divorce and everything, but suicidal? That seemed like a stretch." It was a stretch. But watching you over the past year, seeing how much you've changed, I wonder if maybe she saw something the rest of us missed. I consider this. What do you mean? I mean, maybe she saw that you were in danger. Not of hurting yourself physically, but of just disappearing into yourself. Of becoming someone who was alive, but not really living. It's an interesting perspective, and one I haven't considered before. So, you think she was right to be worried? I think she was right to be worried. I think she was wrong about how to handle it. But maybe the worry itself was justified. We sit with that thought for a while. In the distance, I can hear the sounds of suburban life winding down for the evening. Dogs barking, televisions playing, the occasional car driving by. "Pete, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think I'm a different person now than I was 2 years ago?" He thinks about it seriously. "Yes and no. You're still you, still thoughtful, still a little too serious sometimes, still the guy who mows his lawn in perfectly straight lines. But you're more."
Before, it was like talking to someone who was only half present. Now you're actually here. That's what my therapist says, that the goal isn't to become a different person, but to become more fully yourself. Smart lady. She is. Pete finishes his beer and stands up. I should get back. Karen's been waiting for me to help her with some project upstairs. Thanks for coming over. Anytime, neighbor. After he leaves, I remain on the porch for a while longer, thinking about presence and availability and what it means to be fully yourself. 2 years ago, I was like a radio station with bad reception. The signal was there, but it was fuzzy and hard to tune into. Now, the signal is clearer, stronger. Inside, I can hear Tyler moving around, probably getting ready for bed. Tomorrow, we're going hiking with my group, something I'm genuinely looking forward to. Not because I have to fill time or because I'm trying to prove something to anyone, but because I enjoy it and I want to share it with my son. That's the difference, I realize. 2 years ago, I was doing things to get through time. Now, I'm doing things because I want to do them, because they add something positive to my life. It's a simple distinction, but it's made all the difference. As I head inside to lock up and get ready for bed, I think about Emma's question from earlier. What would engaging with life look like? I still don't have a complete answer, but I have a better sense of what it feels like. It feels like curiosity instead of resignation. It feels like connection instead of isolation. It feels like possibility instead of inevitability. And it feels like something I want to keep working toward, one day at a time. The next morning, Tyler and I meet my hiking group at the trailhead of a state park about 30 minutes from town. It's a diverse group. Retirees, young professionals, parents with older kids, people in various stages of life looking for outdoor adventure and social connection. "Dad, these people seem cool," Tyler says as we're lacing up our boots. "They are. I was nervous the first time I came, but everyone's been really welcoming." "Were you nervous about everything back then?" It's a perceptive question from a 15-year-old. Pretty much. I'd gotten used to staying in my comfort zone. Doing new things felt risky. And now? Now I try to do something that makes me a little nervous at least once a week. Nothing dangerous, just unfamiliar. And now? Now I try to do something that makes me a little nervous at least once a week. Nothing dangerous, just unfamiliar. We join the group, and I introduce Tyler to the regular members. Sarah, a retired teacher who organizes most of our hikes. Marcus, a guy about my age who's going through his own divorce. Jenny, a young marketing professional who's new to the area and looking to meet people. David and Linda, a married couple in their 60s who've been hiking together for decades. As we start up the trail, Tyler falls into step beside Jenny, and they start talking about college and career plans. I find myself walking with Marcus, who's been struggling with some of the same issues I faced after my divorce. "How do you do it?" he asks as we climb a particularly steep section. "The whole starting over thing. Some days I feel like I'm making progress, and other days I feel like I'm back at square one. I think that's normal, I tell him. Healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others. But how do you know if you're actually moving forward or if you're just fooling yourself? It's a question I've asked myself many times. I think you look at the trajectory over time, not the day-to-day fluctuations. 6 months ago, would you have been here, hiking with a group of people you didn't know? Marcus considers this. Probably not. Then that's progress. But I still have days where I don't want to get out of bed. So do I. The difference is that now I have reasons to get out of bed anyway. We hike in silence for a while, both lost in our own thoughts. Around us, the fall foliage is spectacular. Reds and yellows and oranges painting the landscape in colors that seem almost too vivid to be real. You know what's weird? Marcus says eventually. What? Before my divorce, I never would have noticed this. He gestures at the trees around us. I was so focused on work and obligations and just getting through each day that I never really saw the world around me. I know exactly what you mean. It's like I had to lose everything to start seeing anything. Maybe that's not a coincidence, I suggest. Maybe sometimes we have to let go of the life we planned in order to appreciate the life we have. At the summit, our group stops for lunch and to enjoy the view. The valley spreads out below us, a patchwork of farms and forests and small towns connected by winding roads. Tyler is animated, talking with the group about school and his plans for college, clearly energized by being around adults who treat him like an interesting person rather than just a kid. Your son's great, Sarah tells me. You should bring him more often. I will if he wants to come. Dad, Tyler says, appearing at my elbow, can we do the overnight hike next month? I look at Sarah questioningly. Overnight hike? We do a camping trip once a month during the warmer months, she explains. Nothing too strenuous, but we hike in a few miles and spend the night under the stars. Can we, Dad? Tyler asks again. The old me would have found a dozen reasons to say no. Too much planning required, too far outside my comfort zone, too many things that could go wrong. The new me looks at my son's excited face and the encouraging expressions of my hiking companions and thinks about how good it feels to say yes to new experiences. Sure, I tell him, let's do it. On the drive home, Tyler is quiet but content, tired from the hike but energized by the day. Dad, can I ask you something personal? Shoot. Are you dating anyone? The question catches me off guard. No. Why? Emma thinks you should be. Emma thinks a lot of things. Tyler laughs. Yeah, she does. But are you interested in dating? Or are you done with all that? I think about how to answer honestly. I'm not opposed to the idea, but I'm not actively looking either. I spent so many years defining myself as half of a couple that I wanted to figure out who I am as just myself first. And have you figured that out? I'm getting there. Good, because you seem happier now than you did when you and Mom were still together. This stops me cold. Really? Yeah. Back then, you always seemed stressed or tired or like you were somewhere else in your head. Now you seem more, I don't know, more like yourself. It's remarkable how clearly children can see things that adults struggle to understand. Your mom and I weren't very good at being married to each other, but that doesn't mean we're not good people. I know. And I'm glad you guys are happier apart. It's better for everyone. That evening, after Tyler has gone back to his mother's house, I find myself thinking about his observation. Am I happier now than I was during the last years of my marriage? It's a complicated question, because happiness isn't the only measure of a life well lived. I was more settled then, more certain about my daily routine and my long-term plans. But Tyler is right. I was often stressed and distracted, always thinking about the next obligation or worry. I was living life at a distance, going through the motions of being present without actually being present. Now I'm less certain about the future, but more engaged with the present. I have fewer guarantees, but more possibilities. It's a trade-off that, on balance, feels positive. My phone rings, and I'm surprised to see Sarah's name on the screen. Hey, I answer.
Hi, Michael. Tyler just got home, and he's been talking nonstop about the hiking trip. I wanted to thank you
Thank me for what?
for giving him something to be excited about.
For showing him a different side of his father. He said, "You're planning an overnight camping trip?" If he wants to do it. He definitely wants to do it. He's already researching camping gear online. I can hear the smile in her voice, and it makes me smile too. I'm glad he had a good time. Michael, can I say something? Of course. I know the past few years have been hard for you. The divorce, the kids growing up and needing us less. But you've handled it well. Better than I thought you would, honestly. Thanks, I think. Sarah laughs. I mean that as a compliment. You could have gotten bitter or withdrawn completely. Instead, you've grown. You've become someone Tyler actually wants to spend time with. Not just because he has to, but because you're interesting to be around. I had some help, I admit. Therapy, friends, people who refused to let me disappear completely. And Emma's dramatic intervention? Well, whatever worked. I'm proud of you. After we hang up, I sit with the unexpected warmth of my ex-wife's approval. It's strange how much it means to me. Her acknowledgement that I've grown and changed and become someone worth being proud of. But more than that, I'm proud of myself. Not in a boastful way, but in the quiet satisfaction that comes from doing difficult work and seeing real results. From choosing growth over stagnation, connection over isolation, presence over absence. 2 years ago, my daughter thought I was suicidal and had me committed for psychiatric evaluation. She was wrong about the suicidal part, but she was right about the deeper concern. I was at risk of disappearing into a life so small and contained that it barely qualified as living. Now, as I prepare for bed in a house that feels like home rather than a hiding place, I think about the trajectory that brought me here. The false crisis that led to real growth. The lie that pointed toward a truth I'd been avoiding. The intervention that I didn't need, but that opened the door to help I did need. It's been a year and a half since that terrible day in the hospital parking lot, and I can honestly say I'm grateful for it. Not because it was pleasant or easy or fair, but because it was the catalyst that forced me to examine how I was living and decide whether that was how I wanted to continue living. The answer was no. And that realization that I could choose differently, that I could actively work toward a fuller, more engaged life has made all the difference. Tomorrow is Monday, and I'll go to work like I always do. But I'll also have lunch with a colleague I've gotten to know better, and after work, I'll stop by the bookstore to pick up something for my book club, and in the evening, I'll call my brother in California just to catch up. Small things, but they add up to a life worth living. A life where I'm present instead of absent, engaged instead of withdrawn, growing instead of shrinking. Emma was wrong to lie to my doctor, but she was right about one thing. I was disappearing. The difference is that now I'm reappearing, one small choice at a time. And that feels like a story worth telling.